Housing is universally accepted as the second most important human need after food. Hence, the federal government of Nigeria is enjoined by Section 16, subsection 1D of the 1999 Constitution under the fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy to provide suitable and adequate shelter for all citizens. In recognition of this importance, the Jonathan administration established the Federal Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development in April 2010. It was created as the umbrella policy arm of the federal government, charged with the responsibility of ensuring adequate and sustainable housing delivery and maintenance of a conducive living environment that meets the needs and aspirations of the Nigerian citizens. Prior to April 2010, most of the functions of the ministry were performed under various other ministries such as Housing, Works and Environment. Due to this history of institutional instability arising from mergers and demergers, the housing and urban development sector had been organized under different administrative institutional arrangements. The frequent changes in the status, tenure, nomenclature and mandate of the ministry over the years have adversely affected the delivery of housing and urban planning in an efficient and effective manner. By 2010, Nigeria's housing deficit was as high as 16 million units. It was against this background that the Jonathan administration embarked on the reform of the housing sector, beginning with the creation of a stand-alone Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development.
The ministry has, based on the vision statements and the mandate given to it, been working to ensure that the transformation agenda of Mr. President is fulfilled. And we've identified some major key achievements that the ministry has done to ensure that the deficit we have in the housing sector is covered up for Nigerians. Among the key achievements that we've made so far in the ministry, from July 2010 to date, the first one has to do with the two national policies that we have put in place, namely the National Housing Policy and the National Urban Development Policy. It's been developed by the ministry, involving all the key stakeholders in the built environment. All the key stakeholders were brought in, and we put our heads together, argued to ensure that what will come up as the final policy was what will be accepted by the sector.
The following reforms were embarked upon by the Jonathan administration. A. National Housing Policy and the National Urban Development Policy. The government developed for the first in the country's history a policy on housing and urban development. This was done through an inclusive and participatory process involving all key stakeholders in the sector. On the government side, the Federal Executive Council (FEC) approved two policy documents on 20 June 2012. These documents had earlier been deliberated upon and cleared by the Economic Management and Implementation Team (EMIT) on 19 September 2011 and the National Economic Council (NEC) on 10 May 2012. The public presentation of the policy documents was made on 15 November 2012 in Port Harcourt, Rivers State.
We're glad to welcome you here to the FHA Otupani Estate, which is an isolated estate, beautifully completed in a serene environment, and we hope when completed we'll have 86 housing units. Right now we have 84 fully completed, 4 are left. We're working on the infrastructure. As you can see, the road work is still ongoing. We are almost 80% practical completion on the water supply. Electrical wiring is going on for the electrical reticulation and water reticulation. So, sir, you can see we are working to provide shelter for the people of Cross River State.
B. Formulation of National Lands Policy. In 2013, the Ministry observed the absence of a national lands policy, which is very key to the efficient management of the country's land resources. The National Lands Policy is also fundamental to the success of the already formulated National Housing Policy and National Urban Policy. Accordingly, the Ministry has set up a ministerial committee to develop a framework for the formulation of the National Lands Policy. The committee, which was inaugurated on 31st July 2014, has produced a zero-draft National Land Policy. The proposed National Land Policy has 29 chapters. Similarly, the committee has produced a work plan for a successful completion of the National Lands Policy document. The work plan covers activities such as appointment of consultants, request for submission of inputs from stakeholders, organizing validation workshops to consider the draft policy, presentation of the draft policy to National Council on Lands, Housing and Urban Development, presentation to National Economic Council, Federal Executive Council of States. The purpose of involving all stakeholders in the policy development is to ensure their buy-in for wider acceptance. C. Development of a roadmap for the housing and urban development sector. The Ministry's efforts at providing an enabling framework for the successful delivery of affordable housing in Nigeria are being given the necessary impetus through the ongoing process of developing a roadmap was presented for consideration and approval at the Stakeholders Validation Workshop held at the Rockview Hotel, Abuja on the 8th to 9th September 2014. D. The National Building Code. The House of Representatives has commenced the process of enacting a law to enforce the provisions of the National Building Code in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. In consonance with sections 1, 2 and 3 of the Code, all the states of the Federation are expected to domesticate the proposed act of the National Assembly in their respective states to ensure effective implementation of the Code nationwide. E. Urban Development. The Urban and Regional Development Agenda is being pursued through such programs as slum upgrading, articulation of a National Physical Development Plan, and the development of the urban and housing indicators. The development of a comprehensive roadmap on housing and urban development and an infrastructural master plan for Nigeria with a strong component of housing and urban and regional development will significantly boost current efforts to make our cities safer, more productive, inclusive, gender-sensitive, and environmentally friendly. F. Land Administration. Number of Certificate of Occupancy COOs granted, 3,592. Number of consent granted for the transfer of land titles, 1,756. Number of serviced plots created through the Ministry, 3,789. The Ministry is working in partnership with the Presidential Technical Committee on Land Reform (PTCLR) and other stakeholders to address the plethora of issues in land administration and management. The aim is to ensure that landowners have secured titles and bankable assets. Discussions are ongoing with state governors to reduce the cost of land title applications and turnaround time to approve land applications in order to bring down the prices of houses for the citizenry. Draft Land Use Act regulations were developed and produced by the PTCLR in August 2013. G. Land Database. Major efforts were initiated and intensified to update and upgrade the Land Database Management Processing System in the country through the Federal Land Information System FELIS. H. Alternative Housing and Building Technologies. A significant development in the current efforts in housing delivery is the adoption of an alternative building technologies and construction methods in some of the project sites, aimed at improving the speed of construction and eventually reducing the overall cost of construction. Worthy of note are the light gauge steel construction technology, plaswall and plasmolene technology, hydrofoam technology, and burnt bricks. The sector has recorded the following achievements so far. A. Housing delivery. During the period July 2010 to June 2014, a total of 43,126 housing units were added to the national stock through various interventions by the ministry and its two parastatals, namely the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, FMBN, and the Federal Housing Authority, FHA. These include 710 housing units under the Prototype Housing Scheme, 7,869 housing units under Public-Private Partnerships and Contractor Finance, 3,302 housing units through the Federal Housing Authority, FHA, 5,007 housing units through mortgage created by the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, FMBN, 17,240 housing units through estate development loans provided by the FMBN, and 8,998 housing units through contractor finance initiatives. B. Social and Affordable Housing Scheme. The Ministry, in collaboration with the ASO Savings and Loans PLC and the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, has developed 144 mixed housing units of 1 to 3 bedroom apartments at Lugbe, Abuja. The foundation laying ceremony took place on Tuesday, 24th April 2012. In addition, estate developers are enjoined to embrace the concept of mixed development in housing delivery and ensure that at least 20% of the total number of housing units built in a project site is allocated to low-cost housing ranging between 1.5 million naira for 1 to 3 bedroom houses. Moreover, the ministry is collaborating with domestic producers for the supply of building materials to ensure developers at factory prices. The government is also partnering with Cyprus Projects Nigeria Limited, a consortium of Nigerians in the diaspora, to build unity villages in the country, totaling 10,000 units in each of the 6 geopolitical zones. Under the agreement, the ministry is currently funding the provision of infrastructure for the social housing component of the project in a pilot phase in Lafia, Nasarawa State. C. FHA Social Housing Scheme in Zuba, Abuja. This is a social housing scheme aimed at meeting the housing desire of the outcrowded residents of the FCT, characterized by low skills and unemployment. The profile of the proposed estate is as follows: a landmass of 18.49 hectares, single house type in 1, 2, and 3 bedroom blocks of flats, and expected total dwelling capacity is as follows: 1 bedroom, 16 blocks by 16 units, 416 units. 2 bedrooms, 55 blocks by 8 units, 440 units. 3 bedroom, 35 blocks by 8 units, 280 units. Total, 11,136 units. D. Housing and mortgage finance. In consonance with the key recommendations of the Stakeholders Workshop on Housing Mortgage Finance held on 3rd May 2012, a mortgage refinancing company, MRC, has been established with a $300 million IDA credit from the World Bank to create more mortgages in support of home ownership in Nigeria. The company was launched by Mr. President on 16th January 2014. In addition, more contributors are joining the National Housing Fund NHF under a new e-collection systems of an efficient, more transparent and accountable system of fund collection and remittance